Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey since, I would say probably about 4 years now. My soundboard's just doing some weird stuff. Anyway, back on track. Oh, God. So, big thank you to Folgers Coffee, and big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all your favorite music streaming platforms. Thank you. Anyway, also, thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Had to catch my breath. And, yes, find him on Instagram, find him on Facebook, also specializes in the horror genre, does great commission pieces. We love him. So, just saying. You'll see tonight, my special guest host is Preston Dennett. And welcome, Preston. It's always fun having you around.
Thanks,
and
Michelle.
And you're a co-host in the back. Just
Yeah.
doing her thing. So tonight is a treat. We have a returning guest who we haven't had on in a really long time, and we're grateful that he has come back. He is Stephen Bassett, UFO disclosure activist, executive director of Paradigm Research Group, or PRG, as many people know him, which was founded in 1996. He has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of disclosure and the formal confirmation by heads of states of an extraterrestrial presence engaging in the human race and more. He's got a whole lot of things to talk about. I mean, gosh, he's a great talker. We're going to really get a lot of information coming away tonight. We're just waiting for him to come in. And Preston, I know you're going to have a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've known about Stephen's work for a long time. I'm a huge fan. He's the leader, I think, in terms of disclosure advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really important subject. He's doing great work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited to talk to him. Yeah, I've met him once. I'm not sure if he'll remember me, but I certainly remember him.
Well, I let him know you were going to be here. So, and, because I think you guys both have, sorry, I'm just getting, things ready here. I know you guys both have a lot of fantastic views on there, and you're both very outspoken in the field. And it's tough because there's so much stuff out there that is a mix of everything. It's like, who do you follow? What do you do? And Stephen, I know, has been, he's done large events. He's just gotten right in there in the government and went, hey, he's holding people accountable.
Yeah, well, that's what I love about his work, is he's moving out of the UFO field,
right,
and reaching people who probably aren't, a part necessarily of the UFO community. I'll put that in quotes, because really we all are.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. Yes.
I think anyone who gets involved in this field is actually a disclosure advocate on some level.
Mm-hmm.
You're speaking about a subject that is being covered up, or as he says, a truth embargo. And that's why I think this is a really exciting evening.
Yes.
It is an important subject. And
Steve is exciting. I know. He's got great things to say. And I agree with you. There's just a lot of stuff that, let's face it, things have been suppressed from us, need to know basis. Obviously, people don't feel we need to know. And it's been kept from us for a very long time. And it didn't start out that way. I mean, how many times have you and I had conversations about, the ancients? There's stuff all over the darn world that shows they were here. And all of a sudden, no, nobody wants to talk about it. But without further ado, our special guest, Stephen Bassett. Oh, hello. Sorry. Bad moment. Oh, can't hear you.
Oh, hang on.
Oh,
Your volume is very low.
there we go. Yeah, very, very low.
Just a second.
Okay.
We can barely hear you, but not quite there.
Yeah, probably just have to turn up the mic. So while,
Default AFC.
yeah, it's very, very low. So it might just be a volume on your microphone.
I'm sure it is. One moment.
There we go.
I'm traveling.
Got you.
What,
Oh,
is that
I
better?
see.
Yeah,
Much
hear you
better.
now.
We've got
Yep.
you. Yes, thank you. And welcome. Welcome.
Traveling, so I don't have my top of the line equipment right now. Forgive me.
Right.
But
All we need
That's
is you, Stephen. All we need is you. So
hi, Preston. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
we have been waiting for this because I can't tell you. I mean, it's been a long time since you've been on. I think you were on with Darcy Weir many, many years ago. And, we're trying to bring back fan favorites, as I say. And there's a lot going on. A lot has changed between then and now. So where would you like to start with all of this? Because I know. And the stage is yours. You've got it for like 2 hours if you want it. So where are you at right now with everything? With disclosure, have you made any headway, leaps and bounds or inches?
Yeah. How can I put this succinctly? We're practically there. I mean, we've been at this now for 77 years.
Mhm.
That's a long time, though not particularly long in terms of major activist movements of the 20th century. If you look at most of them, they took a long time. Governments do not give up their secrets or their power easily. This was an unusual activist movement. Nothing like it has ever happened, I think, ever, where every year more and more people know something is true, but the government just continues to deny it year after year after year. It's the emperor's new clothes in reverse. In that fable, the emperor was naked, but all the town people were told that to act as if the emperor had some wonderful clothes on. This is the reverse of that. The emperor is, in fact, got a full set of clothes on, but everybody in town is told to act as if the emperor is naked. Right? There's nothing there, and so you're advocating against something which the authorities say doesn't even exist. They're not saying, "Oh, yeah, that's true," but we're not going to do that. Right? The United States government never argued that there was no racism in the country as the civil rights movement moved forward, and that would have made it a lot harder. I mean, literally, it's an official policy of the government and the universities and all the intellectuals saying, "No, there's no racism." Would have made it a lot harder. Well, that's what we're dealing with. So it's been an interesting 77 years, exactly the full span of my lifetime. I was born 6.5 months after Hiroshima, Hiroshima bomb, or the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, as a result of my father getting mustered out of the Pacific because the war ended because of those bombs. And then I was, I say born, I'm sorry, conceived 6.5 months after that. I was born. Too much information, I know.
No,
I
it's
was
okay.
born.
You're amongst friends.
And then I was born 6.5 months before Roswell. And so my entire life is, in fact, followed this extraordinary 77-year history.
Right. You were meant to do this.
After all this time, we are right at the threshold. It's like 1964, and the word is starting to get around that there's a chance that the Senate will pass the Civil Rights Act so that it can be signed by the president, and that it would be Johnson. But it wasn't a certainty. And so everybody was excited and everybody was thinking about this. And there was a lot of discussions, I'm sure, about what would they, what won't they, and heavy, deep politics. Because from the standpoint of the southern states, this is a big deal. And from the standpoint of many citizens, it was a big deal, controversial, plenty of pushback. And ultimately, it was signed, 1964. Now, that's where we
Haven't
are
our
now.
governments now admitted that there is validity to this phenomena? I mean, they basically said UFOs, UAPs are real, but they're not saying what they are.
Depends on who you mean by what you mean by they. Where we are now is that quite a very large number of individuals with substantial rank and station, careers and what have you, classification status, have simply stated there's non-human intelligence here. So that's pretty much out at a level we've never seen. And that's been accumulating for several years now, going all the way back to, 2016, when the To the Stars Academy, I think, was already formed or in the process of being formed. This was in May of 2016. And I think the To the Stars Academy had intention of actually launching right after Hillary Clinton was elected, sometime in the transition period. I've said this many times. I've never been corrected. Robert Bigelow, who was attached to that story, because as you know, part of the story was the ATIP program. And we learned that Bigelow eventually was received some of the funding went to him as part of the research of ATIP, because ATIP was kind of a throwback to NIDS and the Skinwalker Ranch and what have you. And then we also learned that it was Bigelow that helped to persuade Senator Reid to make this move and ask the Pentagon to do this study, to do something like this and help raise the money for it. Bigelow went on 60 Minutes in May and told Laura Logan flat out, there's terrestrial presence. And when she asked him if, well, aren't you afraid people will think you're crazy or something? I don't give a damn. And then she asked him again. I mean, and he said, yeah, true. So that was May 2016. So, but things don't really get started, of course, until the To the Stars Academy comes out in October. I think 22nd. I think it was 22nd of October. Might have been the 11th. And then followed 2 months later by the New York Times articles. And then the final phase of the history of the truth embargo, this interesting episode, gets well underway and proceeds apace for 7 solid years. The first 2 years was interesting. There was a lot of information being passed around, a lot of stuff on social media. Luis Elizondo was out giving interviews. There was a series on the History Channel called Unidentified. But then they really started getting underway 2 years in, which is 2020, when we believe, possibly in 2019, when Christopher Mellon started leading the witnesses up to the Hill, starting to be the key figure who was presenting witnesses to members of Congress, members of key committees like the Intel Committee, maybe Armed Services, House, and Senate. And he was the perfect person to do that, given his background in Intel, Senate, DIA, all that stuff. I'm not done DIA, but as part of the Department of Defense Intelligence and also the Senate Intelligence. And so at that point, members of Congress are getting direct private briefings from witnesses. Why? In order to prepare for hearings. That's what you do. You don't just bring somebody in to testify in front of you under oath and before you talk to them, before you get to know them. In this case, they really had to get information to decide to even talk to witnesses for a hearing. And so this learning process goes on all through the end of 19 and 2020 and so forth. And so that, and has continued to go on now for over almost 5 years. So again, that has happened. Nothing like that had happened previous. And then, of course, in 2020, because of these briefings and because of statements being made by various people, the thing was getting out more and more and more. It reached a critical threshold. And that threshold took place when Marco Rubio put some UAP bill, I guess you could say, UAP language into the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. It was a limited bill, but nevertheless, it addressed the issue. It was the first time in American history that any legislation was done related to.
What do you suppose, encouraged him to do that? Just the pressure of all. What do you suppose encouraged Marco Rubio to actually take a step forward with this when no one else had for so many years.
Well, principally because he was getting briefed. He wasn't the only one. I think Mellon was introducing witnesses of various levels of significance to every member of the Intel committee. There's 17, 9 Dems, 8 Republicans. So he was getting personal meetings with these people as well as others. He was aware of that. There's also been a great deal of media coverage since 2017. I mean, it was just pouring out. I can show you that. Let me take a moment and do that. I'm getting really good at sharing stuff. Here's a share. Here we go. I love sharing. It just makes me feel so tech.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's definitely going into the mainstream very quickly now. So
here we go. Faster and faster at this. All right. What you have here is Paradigm Research Group's homepage, my main site. And that's going to be dramatically changed soon. And I'll tell you why later. But then under resources on my site over here is the Print Media Archive. And the Print Media Archive is a project I started back in 2006. And essentially what I started doing was linking to articles on the internet regarding UAP, ET, whatever, that I considered to be appropriate. And they needed to be relatively high-level publications. It wasn't just very small fringe stuff. It needed to be legitimate professional journalism. So I triaged, since 2006, 15,405, actually it's more than that, articles linked from here. And then as links became dead, meaning that it disappeared from the site, from the web, I also saved all 15,000 of them. So what I would do is I would simply relist the site or link the site to my server. And so most of these articles are still available. There's nothing like this anywhere in the world. It's a major resource, which I promote because it's useful to almost anybody, researchers or what have you. And so what you can see here, if you look at the number of articles, we had a very strong year in 2009, 1,100, and then 2010. It's not clear to me why it was so intense those 2 years. I have to think about it more. But then it kind of went back to the usual numbers. A little spike in 2016. That was because of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And there was a great deal of coverage of that campaign because she was speaking to the issue. I'm going to take full responsibility for that because I rained down the media upon her. Then she lost. Things faded off. And then right here, look at this. This year, and then it explodes in 2023. But just look at the number of articles. This is still a very large number. Is it 12, 2,000, 24, 34, 42, 52, 60, 7,000 articles since 2017.
I'm not sure we're seeing what you're looking at. It's just showing the front page, but I'm not sure we're seeing.
You're not. I did a link. I switched over to.
Hold on. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. It doesn't do it unless we remove it.
All right, here's what I want to do. Here's what I've done.
I'm going to remove it, put it back up, and then I'll bring it back. So you have to end one to get the other one, unfortunately.
I understand. Okay. I think I know exactly what you mean.
Good.
Well, not that one.
Come back. Dang. Okay.
He'll be back shortly. He knows what he's doing.
See?
It's very interesting that there's a huge spike in interest. I think now the government has reached a point where they have to talk. If they don't, they're going to look irrelevant.
There's no turning back, I think, from this point. You can't just, poo-poo everything everybody else has said. I mean, there's people coming forward like, oh, okay.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
I think what I needed to do, and I've learned something here, is if I want to show an interior page, I need to bring that up, get it up first, and then do the share. So let's go ahead and let me do the share.
Okay. Again. Yes, I think you have to end one before the other one before putting up another one as well. At least from when we do it. Depends how you're doing it.
Well, let's see. Okay. I think it's going to work.
You're in charge. All right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Nope.
I got to do another one.
We're back there. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
stop. I gotta change it. Gotta go here. Hang on.
Okay.
I did a stop share. Gonna go back here. Gonna do it again. Hang on. We learn by doing. All righty.
That's right.
Present.
You're doing a great job.
Okay. And now I think I have it. Here we go. Share. There you go.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
There we are.
So you can see this is the linkage going back to 47, 15,000 articles. A triage probably from about 40,000, meaning there's another 25,000 links that showed up online that were just not significant enough. They weren't professional media, or they were silly, frivolous articles, not important. So again, 15,000 or 45,000. And between 17, well, actually, it was the end of 17, but between 17, which was an interesting year, because it followed well, let's go back to 16. The reason there was 1,000 articles linked in 2016 was because of all the interest in the subject during the Clinton campaign. She was bringing it up repeatedly. So was John Podesta and her husband. And so essentially it generated a lot of media. Over 400 articles referred to Hillary Clinton or the Clinton team in one way or another with respect to the ET issue. And I thought that was prelude to something major, meaning I thought she was going to disclose. She lost. But in this period right here, and just these 8 years, 8,000 articles were triaged out of probably 20,000, all meaningful articles about the ET issue. And the largest number ever was 2023. And so all of this media coverage, which is meaningful, and if you go back and read it, for instance, in 2023, there were 22 articles in the New York Times. Most people don't know that. But if you were to go there and do a word search on New York Times, just on that page, boom, you could go find every one of them, 22 articles. And so when you ask the question, why did Marco Rubio do what he did? It was the combination of years of media coverage, witnesses being brought up to testify, and the issue maturing further and further until it was appropriate for him to put that legislation in. And so that was a major event, first legislation in history. It was modest, generated a report that was supposed to be delivered by June 25th of 2021. That helped to generate a lot of media, because if you want the media to cover something, give them a date that something is going to happen so that they can anticipate it, and they'll just cover it like crazy. And they did. And it generated over 1,000 articles in 2021. And then, of course, Gillibrand followed with a new tranche of legislation in 2021, also in the NDAA. Notable, and this isn't just some standalone bill that some member of Congress wants to do. It is, in fact, the National Defense Appropriations Act, one of the most important bills passed every year. And so you've got UAP language in the National Defense Bill. And then in the third year, essentially, Mark Warner sponsored the third tranche of legislation, all right, which was significant. It took the measure further, added witness protections and so forth. All of this is easily to find. I have them linked on my site. And then, of course, in 2023, things really went boom. So the reason we're so close is the accumulation of 77 years of citizen activism, journalism, documentaries, witnesses, and so forth, followed by 7 years of intense engagement in the public arena, in which it went political, huge media coverage. And that is why we are virtually at the door of disclosure right now. I mean, we are practically there. And then I'll elaborate on that. So we can just come on back to regular. You can take that. Well, no, let me just do this.
You can take it down. Yeah, just stop screen, and then, you are completely in control.
But let me see if I can scroll it, though. I think I can scroll it. 1 second. Let me do this. Go here.
Yeah, you're
Just
on
want
the
to
site.
give you a sense of this page, how impressive it is. I'm going to go. Where is it? Okay, I think it is this one. Okay, have I got it? Okay. Can you see the scroll?
Oh, there
Yes.
we go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this is just through August of 2024, right?
Wow.
Right. And you can see
Substantial.
News Nation has become a major entity in this. News Nation is a very legitimate entity, heavily funded by a very significant company trying to position itself halfway between CNN and Fox News. And it's done tremendous coverage. So is the Debrief. All right. Huge coverage in the UK. All the papers there cover this relentlessly. The UK people get constant stream of information, even though their government's not really doing anything. And so it just goes on and on and on and on. And I assure you, this was not the case back in the 60s or 70s. And there's for every 100 of these articles, one, and I put them up, is a debunking piece. One is a ridicule piece. Maybe one or two most in 100 articles. I think it's less than one, actually. So again, if you've got massive, positive, appropriate, legitimate coverage of the issue with virtually no debunking going on year after year, should anybody be surprised that eventually it's going to be fully engaged politically, and we're going to get resolution of what is the most probably important issue in the world today, and easily the greatest news story in history. And let's face it, media, whether it's print or whether it's electronic, their whole game is to break major stories, to get eyeballs, to win Pulitzer Prizes. And this is the greatest news story of all time. And while they have gone along with the truth embargo for most of the 77 years, did anybody inside the Pentagon think that would go on forever? That they would just continue to let this slide? I don't think so. So that just gives you a sense of answering your question is, well, why now? Okay.
Well, what does disclosure look like? I mean, what's the goal of it? Just to have the sitting government say this is real, or get the Roswell craft in a museum? I mean, what is the end game here?
Well, the end game is confirmation. There is a lot of confusion about this term, and I take full responsibility for it. There's two kinds of disclosure, small d and capital D. Small d disclosure has been around forever. It applies to, obviously, anything where you have the revealing of information, the disclosing of information. It's a big important. And disclosure has been going on I'd like to say disclosure started when I think it was Colonel Blanchard allowed Walter Haut to put out that press release that they'd found a saucer. They actually said
they
that
hadn't retracted that. Just cut it out and not retracted. It would have been a different world.
That was a pretty significant piece of disclosure, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So since then, we have been in small disclosure mode with information coming out every single year, mostly from the public, but over the years, a lot from the government, from freedom of information.
You have astronauts as well. You have MacArthur. I mean, you've got presidents who have come forward saying, doesn't any of this count? We don't care for the president. We don't care what you have to say. I mean,
it all counts and it's all disclosure, small d disclosure. What Stephen Greer started his work in the late 1980s, primarily focused on CE5s, and eventually got meetings with the government and was doing some significant things. He had a lot of funding and he had the ability to do that. He called his project the Disclosure Project. But I'm pretty sure that in that sense, he was using the word in the term small d disclosure mode, meaning the revealing process, getting information out, and that's what he was doing. Perfectly fine. And disclosure, small d, will go on forever on this subject, right? Okay, so fine. So what happened? What happened is that I entered the field in '96 as an activist. I was able to get attention by being the first lobbyist that ever registered on this issue. Nobody else was insane enough to do it. There was no money and lots of ridicule, and no one was going to meet with me on the Hill. I had a few meetings, not much, but no one had done it. And so I did it to make a point, to plant a flag. It got me a lot of attention, including a huge article in the Washington Post, and that launched my career as an activist. I'm basically a disclosure activist. I've always been that. I've had one simple goal from the beginning: ending the truth embargo. But the term truth embargo didn't exist, and neither did capital D disclosure. So after about 4 years, it became increasingly clear to me that one of the things holding back a legitimate activist movement, because there really hadn't been, from 47 to 2000, but now from 47 to about the early 1990s, there really was no activist movement at all. What was going on? All these organizations were formed, like NICAP and NICAP, APRO, and MUFON, of course. And all the work was being, what was it about? It was all about proving. There was this endless effort to prove the truth of this matter by reviewing thousands of sightings and pointing out this and checking out this and checking out that and writing up articles. It was all about proving it, because they felt that if they could prove it, the government would go, oh, wow, it's true. Let's check our files and see what we know, you know?
Right.
And of course, it wasn't going to work. The government ignored it all. It just didn't matter. You if you were to drag a saucer into the parking lot of the DOD, they would rush out, cover it in a tarp, take it away, and tell everybody it never happened. And so this was tough. This was tough. People spent their whole lives, in some cases, researching this, with the government refusing to acknowledge it. So what was needed was a political activist movement, because this is a political issue. That's why I got into it. And so I realized that one of the reasons there wasn't an activist movement is that it wasn't properly defined as an activist movement, and there wasn't a prize. Every activist movement has got to have a very clear prize at the end, at least at the end of that particular era. In the case of the Civil Rights Act, it was clear. It was the civil rights movement was the Civil Rights Act. Clearly, that's what it was. Probably one of the most defined prizes you can imagine in any activist movement was the women's suffrage movement. What was the reason why they went out and protested for years and years and years? To get the right to vote, period. Nothing else was going to satisfy that movement, and they got the right to vote. We didn't have it. And so I said, what's the prize in this movement? The government acknowledging that it's true? Well, yeah, but that's pretty, it's not clear. It's not defined.
It's just words. It's no real action.
What does it mean? I said, I know what it is. It's when the head of state of a major nation, pretty much, there's some small nations that wouldn't matter, steps forward in the public and says, yeah, we're not alone. There's extraterrestrials here. We are being visited, whatever. That is the prize. And I said, well, what are we going to call it? I felt, okay, I'm going to call it Disclosure with a capital D. Disclosure Day, I guess you could say. I have created a World Disclosure Day. It's July the 8th. So World Disclosure Day, disclosure with a capital D, the formal confirmation by the head of state, not by subsecretary, not by a member of the cabinet, by the head of state. That is disclosure. And the moment that happens, which won't happen just out of nowhere, there'll be a good reason why that head of state does this. Every other major head of state will follow within days.
It has to be a sitting head of state, though, right?
Yes, sitting
Paul
head of state.
Hellyer, one of the higher levels. He was retired, basically.
He was retired, and he had never been prime minister. He'd been essentially the head of defense. So I call that disclosure with a capital D. Now, obviously, that has been confused over the years constantly. I get it. It's okay. But, I don't mind it too much, because these little controversies of what is disclosure, what does it mean, just helps to elevate the term, right? And guess what? It got so well elevated that in the seminal bill submitted by Schumer in 2023, it was called the UAP Disclosure Act. And I don't think he had small d disclosure. I think, well, in a sense, he did. In other words, this was the act that was going to formally allow and in an orderly process, the government to, quote, small d disclose everything. Ultimately, it might take years, but they would get it all out. We'd be seeing stuff coming forward almost immediately. And we would be essentially on the other side of the truth embargo, because Schumer almost certainly knows that if that act is passed, and a couple of major hearings take place, actually only need one, there have been several, then almost certainly the president will disclose. So you get the act, you get disclosure, you get a hearing, the act, disclosure. And so the capital D disclosure, the confirmation event, takes place. And then that act will facilitate the small d disclosure, ultimately, of everything the government has ever known, every document, every piece of technology, all science derivatives and so forth, will be disclosed to the American people and the world. Just the most incredible event in human history, the biggest paradigm shift in all time. Just it doesn't get. It's the ultimate historical Super Bowl.
Do you think we'll see everything? I mean, how much will really
I'd be
be?
surprised.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they let everything go. But to
We
me,
will-
anything that we don't have is a win, right?
we will get everything, but we won't get it all at once. They're going to bring out an enormous amount of information, but they're going to hold back some. And if you read the bill, either the first one that was submitted or the second one, which is essentially the same exact bill, when you read that bill, it describes the entire process. It's orderly. It's designed to be safe. It doesn't want to violate national security, so it sets up a presidential or a UFO review board with high-level appointees who make the decision, okay, this goes forward or this gets held back for a while. And they just go through everything that way. And so there's a stream of stuff coming forward and some things being held back. And the things will be held back for various reasons. But the bill requires that you have to give why. You have to give a summary of why. And you actually have a record and you have to report back. And so when you read the bill, it's clearly designed that everything, I mean everything, will come forward. Now, I think that the writers of the bill, which are Rounds and Schumer, and maybe a couple of others, they may have their idea of how many years it will take for it all to get out. I think that they're probably overestimating it, because once that information starts coming out to the world, the pressure on every government to get it all out will just grow with every single passing week. And because the government has finally admitted it's all true, they can't simply ignore that pressure. And so it will probably all get out a lot sooner than they would like. And by the way, I'm confident still that before it is all out, well, quite a bit is out, we're actually going to be in formal open contact with extraterrestrials. So the
That's what I was
details
going to
won't be.
ask you. Do you think the United States is one of the last to do it? So many countries through the last, I would say, 5 years or so, have come out with little snippets. I think Russia was like all over it, giving out, some of the records and experiences from their Air Force, some of their scientists. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's documented. I think Brazil has always been, just tell us what you see.
Mexico's been pretty open too. Chile.
Mexico, France was meh, but they encourage people to, yes, tell us your experiences. Canada was with the US. I mean, they were sort of probably only in the last, couple of years or so where they started leaking out little stuff. But the United States, of course, being the superpower, is thinking, no, we're going to hold off as long as we can. Do you think they're in a way watching what everybody else does and seeing where the boundaries are and what they should say and not say?
Well, first of all, the United States has actually released a tremendous amount of material.
Okay.
Most people don't know this, but if you look,
that's why you're here. Yes.
The CIA released a substantial tranche of documents that kind of referred to this. The FBI released a substantial tranche of documents. A lot of FOIA recourse have been FOIA submissions have been reported too. Just ask John Greenwald. I think he has 1 million documents in his black vault now. And of course, there have been statements. So it's not as if they've been able to keep it totally bottled up. They haven't. Probably more has been released by our government than any other government. However, when any other government does release something, we take note. It was always notable that Russia seemed to be relatively chill on this subject, and scientists were allowed to do some work, though it depended upon which era you were talking about. But it wasn't for them a major problem. Now, I think that is clamped down. I actually went to Russia and talked with 6 different groups about this, and I had no trouble, and I was able to leave the country. Though I wasn't positive I could leave the country.
Right.
I've done work, Peru, Ecuador, but none of it is disclosure. No head of state has ever publicly acknowledged the extraterrestrial presence. Not even Gary, the prime minister, I think that was his title, of Grenada, when he was being the focal point for some efforts in 78 to get the UN involved. And of course, the Secretary General of the UN has not done it. The Pope has not done it. No figure at that level has ever confirmed the ET presence. Such is the nature of this truth embargo and its success. But that is about to end. And when the confirmation comes, formal, from the head of state, which then opens all the doors. I mean, Edgar Mitchell said there was ETs here in 2009. Did that open the doors? No.
Yes.
Gary Nolan said it on television the other day. To come, did that? No, it didn't. And these are high-level people because the president is an important person. Yeah, Gord Cooper. So the president, that formalizes it. That basically sends a message to every element of government as well as the people that this issue is true. It's going to be dealt with. You have all kinds of expectations as citizens of the government to deal with it. And now off we go. Okay. And so, and Schumer knows this is where it's going. And the reason that he boldly put forward the UAP Disclosure Act in 2023 rather, for the 20-foot NDA, is because he, I think, was anticipating the possibility of disclosure happening under Biden relatively soon. Now let's go back to that period. This is one of the most significant few months in human history. Again, when you're in the middle of it and you're in the stream of things, you don't necessarily pick up on it. It's later that the historians come back and tell you, or tell you later on that, oh yeah, this was like unbelievable. And it is a period that starts on June the 5th of 2023. And yeah, 2023. And it is when everyone learned that something had been going on for about a year, but it had been tightly held. I mean, really tightly held. And that is an interview with Ross Coulthart was being prepared for some time, and an article was being prepared for some time, and they both hit on the same day. It was the article in the debrief about David Grush, written by Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. And of course, it was the interview with Australian journalist who now works for News Nation, Ross Coulthart, in which basically Grush, claiming to be a whistleblower, came forward and said, I told the government some time ago that we have non-human tech and non-human bodies, told to me by firsthand USAP people working on that technology. And essentially, I just simply got harassed. I was not treated well. This issue, it wasn't moved forward properly. I mean, that's not the issue. He wasn't treated well. What the government chooses to do with that is the government's business, not his. But he was harassed. He was damaged and became very frustrated. And so he comes forward and lays that out to Ross Coulthart. Well, boom. Okay, that was something that has never happened like that. It was a whole level, 2 or 3 levels above anything we've seen before. It was major. And of course, it directly depended upon how well Grush could hold up and his background credentials. And so that happened on June the 5th. Shortly thereafter, he comes under attack. Sean Kirkpatrick wrote a nasty letter about him. Somebody leaked his medical files. He was getting threats. His family was getting threats. This is what happens when you're a real whistleblower. All right. And so it's June the 5th, and everybody's extremely fired up, and we're expecting something to happen. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? There was plenty of press coverage, of course. He did, I think he did a video with one of his friends. It was kind of like a podcast that went out. But really, the government did not respond until June the 5th. It was the 12th. No. It was the 30. God, I can't remember. It was the 14th. Yeah, 14th of July. 35 days. Okay, I mean 30 some days later. Chuck Schumer, out of nowhere, suddenly gives an interview and says that he and Mike Rounds have completed the legislation for the 2024 NDAA. There'd be 2 tranches, right? And this would be the third 2021, actually 3 tranches rather. This was the 4th. And he announces this bill, and it is the full comprehensive bill. It's everything. It's the whole thing. There's no more dilly-dallying here. And I was stunned. I was listening to this, and I'm going, this is it. This is the bill you have to have. You don't need more than this for the president to disclose, should the president decide to do that. And as I'm listening to it, in the very end, he indicates something that literally took me out of my chair. The bill, among all the other things that he mentioned, would include eminent domain on the part of the government over the non-human tech and bodies that Grush was referring to in that interview, and anything else they have of an ET relation in the hands of any civilians or any civilian companies. And I said, holy mackerel, because I knew exactly what that meant. Every contractor out there that had any ambitions of, without any regulation or input by the government, of cashing in on the science and engineering we've learned from working on those craft for decades, essentially was at risk if the government chose to exercise eminent domain. And I knew that was not going to make them happy. And which is, that's their problem. But
Yes.
it was
This has been part of the problem of the cover-up, right? That some of this is withheld in civilian hands and not subjected to government oversight.
Well, the truth embargo is many parts, yes. And one of the parts is that a lot of things are in private hands. But that's again, just part of the truth embargo. There's stuff everywhere. This particular component is interesting strategically because under the law, these contractors are exempt from FOIA, which makes it a little more secretive, right? A little protected. The fact is, even if it's not if it is open to FOIA, which a lot of stuff in government is, they just don't tell you. I mean, you can submit the FOIA and they're just not going to give you anything. And you can file a lawsuit. They're not going to give you anything.
It's like the Citizens Against UFO Secrecy versus the NSA. What did we get? Blacked out pages.
So, or nothing. They totally control it. This was a huge deal. And why? Because in that moment, and this is going to go down in history, that day that he makes this announcement, right? Which I think was it was the 14th. It was the 14th of July, approximately 35 days after Grush. I knew that this was a game changer and that he had just done something historic. Why? Because, again, 35 days prior, Grush had come forward under oath and stated we have non-human tech, non-human bodies. He was under attack. Kirkpatrick was denying it, or at least attacking him. There was a lot of controversy. They were looking into his past, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now Grush is absolutely righteous, and he is a hero. He should get the Medal of Freedom. But again, it's the social media. This is the time when you want to go public with something. I don't care who you are. You better be ready, right? Because it's going to get rough, okay? And so the moment that he uttered those words, that this bill will include eminent domain over non-human tech and bodies in the hands of civilian companies, he just confirmed Grush, didn't he? One of the most powerful men in the country, one of the Gang of Eight, the Senate Majority Leader, just said, we want eminent domain over that non-human tech. Well, if there's no non-human tech and Grush is lying, you don't need eminent domain. So he just backed him up. Okay, that's one. Secondly, he just sent a message to the entire government, particularly the entire military intelligence complex, all the services, all the intelligence agencies, that the Senate is serious about this and we're going to proceed. And I'm obviously not afraid of what you may think about that or how upset you're going to be. He just literally sent this message out to the world too. Wow. Right? At that point,
unprecedented. Yeah.
And the other thing is he also let it be known clearly that everything that the Senate's been doing with those previous 3 tranches of legislation, he's behind it. He'd never said anything prior to this. So he's confirming the Senate's actions are righteous. So that happens on the 14th of July. Only 12 days later, Tim Burchett, Nancy Mason, Anna Paulina Luna who were part of a subcommittee in the House, managed to get a hearing together with Grush, who I think they saw the opportunity to get a hearing. It's not easy, right, to just put one of those together. But I think they understood that Grush wanted to testify as soon as possible. He didn't want to wait for a major hearing in front of the Intel Committee. He wanted to get that under oath as soon as possible to help, again, protect him and shore up his actions. And so that hearing takes place, and he repeats everything under oath with a lot of people watching on television. And so that happens, right, on the 12 days after Schumer makes his statement. And then we proceed from there. All right. Now, what happens next is also important and historically. And that is this: major opponents to the truth embargo, mostly centered in the defense contractors and their lobbyists, decided they could not let that go. They had been hiding behind there's nothing here to see for so long, except for the occasional hint from a Ben Rich. We have the tech to take ET home, and that kind of playing with this, which really irritates me. Ben, you're gone now, but still, that's not good. I don't like it. It's irritating. That they had to take action. And so they started, it took weeks before we found out about it, because it was all, back in the background. But essentially, they were able to convince certain very powerful people in the House, and at least one in the Senate, that to get in touch with the reconciliation conference people and say, you got to gut that bill. You got to take those, at least you got to take the whole bill out or take the powers out, whatever. You got to get as much out of there as you can. And we launched a campaign to sort of try to prevent that, a little citizen effort there on social media, but no. And so they stripped all the powers from the bill, which obviously included eminent domain. But they didn't take the whole thing out, probably because they couldn't. I don't think that the people in the conference were going to go that far, but they gutted the bill. So in a sense, they got something, but they lost a great deal. In other words, this was a flailing effort to try to save off the inevitable. It blew up in their face, and I think Schumer anticipated this. And so they gut the bill. And what do we learn then when it happens? It was obvious. If there's no non-human tech and non-human bodies, if there's no extraterrestrial tech and no extraterrestrials here, there's no need to worry or concern about eminent domain. It's irrelevant.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so by doing it, they confirmed it themselves. So now, now it's getting worse for them, right? And so they do this, and they're thinking, well, we got to win here, and hopefully that'll hold the hordes off. And then only a short time after that, Rounds and Schumer go into the Senate and read into the record, meaning there's a camera there, nobody in the chamber, but it's going to go to the congressional record, that, they're not done. But this is unfortunate, but we're going to continue this. We're going to get this done. And then the guys back at the defense contractors are going, oh God, we were hoping he'd just go away, right? And then they thought about it a little bit more, and they're thinking, wait a minute, he could put a standalone bill in. If he puts that in as a standalone bill, then you can't get it gutted in reconciliation. You literally have to vote publicly on it in the House and the Senate. Right? Everybody's going to see your vote and the yeas and the nays, and we're going to have to do this all over again. And so they really started to worry. They go, oh my God, this is not good. And then probably somebody pointed out, by the way, you can gut that bill, but you have no power to stop Mark Warner from bringing 20 major witnesses in any time and testifying in front of millions of people around the world with under oath, like Grush, only 20 Grushes. And they're going, oh, we may have screwed up here. And so they did something else, which only made it worse. Hail Mary pass, right? They're virtually lost the game. It's almost over. They got to throw a Hail Mary pass. And what they did was they phonied up the Arrow study report that was expected. They basically turned it into a Condon report, where they lied about everything and said that they'd studied all the relevant sightings going back to 47, which would have taken them years and millions of dollars. And they found nothing. There's nothing there. And they put this out. All right. But in order to, it had to be signed by somebody. And so they convinced Sean Kirkpatrick, who'd already resigned but hadn't left the office yet, that he would put his signature on it. And I don't know the particulars there, but I can speculate that if he had not agreed to sign it, that job that he had waiting for him upon quitting the Arrow might just disappear. He has a wife, he has family, his kids. And so he was in an impossible position. So he signs it. And so they put this out. And it's a joke. It'll be a massive historical joke, much worse than the Condon report, because this is not 1969. This is 2024. And the social media just came in and ripped it to pieces. And so they made complete asses of themselves. But they thought maybe that pass would be caught. Well, it really wasn't caught. But the effect of all of this, the pushback against Grush, the Hail Mary pass, the blocking of the bill, pushed everything deeper into 2024. And so the situation, that the win that they got, was that it really became impossible politically for Warner to go ahead and call that hearing. He's a Democrat. We have a presidential race that's considered pretty significant right now, and this will be the biggest hearing of all time. This will be a major thing, and he intellectually, maybe he'll explain himself someday, but I understand why. He said, "Dude, there's no way we can hold this hearing now. We cannot hold this hearing this close to the election," and so they got enough delay to get it into that now. So where are we as of today, right? As of August 25. We're 44 days from the election, all right? There will be no hearing in the Senate, but it's notable.
Guess that answers this question.
Yeah, there will be no hearing in the Senate before the election. However, the House has already indicated it's going to hold a hearing right after the election, right? It's going to hold its next one, which is dying to do, right after the election, which I noted. Gillibrand in the Senate has indicated that she wants a briefing, maybe a hearing in the Senate after the election. At minimum, she's going to bring the new head of Arrow up for a briefing, but she might bring some witnesses. Who knows? So that's in play, but that's not enough, right? And really, where history rests right now, and this is a rare case where history of the highest level is clearly resting on one person's shoulders. And you could say it's the president. And technically, the president could disclose any time the president wants, but without the right lead up and preparation, it would be an irresponsible act. So it actually rests on the shoulders of Mark Warner, a good man, the chairman of the House Intel Committee. He can hold the hearing. The witnesses are ready. They're stunning. They're amazing. Almost everyone, probably everyone, will have security clearances. You always have them. Some will be retired. Some will be active. And their testimony will basically be the equivalent of 20 Grushes. He can call that here anytime he wants. He's chosen to hold off. But the election is 44 days away. There's 3 ways this could go forward. And this is how close we are. He has the option of holding the hearing after the election. All right. And before the new Congress takes office, I think on January the 3rd, and obviously the president on January the 20th. There's plenty of time. He could hold that hearing, bring in the witnesses. And when that hearing is done, the stage will be absolutely set for President Biden to come forward and the truth embargo by doing a disclosure act. Now, why would he do this? Well, there's some pluses here. One of the advantages is that President Biden's career is over. He's not going to be president next year. He's not going to run for anything anymore. And so he's kind of, there's a less political attachment to it. It's a wonderful legacy gift to him on the way out after many years of service. And that's a positive. The other is that by getting disclosure out of the way before the new Congress takes place and the new president, essentially, you've gotten disclosure out of the way. And so they start from day one, the moment the new Congress takes office in January 3rd, and the new president in 2020. Disclosure is already done. And there's probably been a whole lot happening, news and everything else. I mean, things are all excited, things are going on. And they start from day one addressing this issue without any ambiguity, without any lead up. So boom, they're off to the races. That's good. His second option is to wait until after the Congress takes office, but before the president takes office. In that 17-day period between January 3 and January 20. What's the advantage with that? There's two advantages. Well, one, the new Congress is in play, and the people that are going to be hearing that testimony will be part of the new Congress. They're all going to be ruling. There's nobody. Well, they're all new. They're all new. And so it includes them. It gives the new Congress the legacy of being part of it. It certainly gives the Intelligence Committee, the new Intelligence Committee, to be part of it, and so it allows a more participation across party lines. And then the other thing is that if you time it just right, when the hearing ends, you would only have to take kind of a beat, maybe a couple of days tops, and it wouldn't be Biden that steps out and confirms it. It would be the new president that does it after the inauguration. And so essentially, you have given the legacy of being the disclosure president, unless another leader jumps ahead of us. It's going to happen anytime, to the new president. It's going to be serving for 4 years. And so they've got that legacy. Now, that legacy is massive political capital that you just handed to the new president that they can then use in terms of dealing with, the affairs of state. And so that's a significant advantage. The third,
it would be good on his part to do it.
It would be the right side of history.
Yeah. I mean, leave office with a bang.
But isn't that kind of handing the new president a hot potato that they have to deal with now?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Being the new president is to getting a basket of hot potatoes. I mean, that's what
That's one more, right?
And if you don't want hot potatoes, you made a huge mistake.
wrong word. Yeah.
So that is the second option. The third option is to wait until after the new president is in office, and then hold the hearing then. Now, there's a little twist here, because if the Republicans take the Senate, it will be Mark Rubio who will be the chairman. And then in terms of those last two options, in that case, it's Rubio that has to decide whether to hold that hearing and give the legacy over to the new president. And that gets complicated, because if the new president is a Democrat, Rubio may be reluctant to do that. But I'll be honest with you, Mark Rubio is a pretty good guy, and he's into the issue. He's played his part. And I think ultimately this thing is so huge, so important, that he gets that. And so he would call the hearing, and if Harris wins, she would get that legacy. Or, quickly they can have Biden disclose.
Yes.
Well, which option do you think is most likely then of these three?
Yeah. So, the third option is the one. That third option is, I'm not crazy about it, and that's to hold it after the inauguration. In which case, obviously, the new president would be the disclosure president, and the new Congress would be dealing with it from the get-go. But I have a problem there, a worry, a concern. You'd be talking now about mid-February, which is October, November, December, January, February. It's almost 5 months. I don't know if we can make it to then. I'm serious.
Sounds pretty dire.
I don't know if we can make it to then. I mean, I don't know if we can make it to the end of the year. I'm simply saying that we can't get disclosure fast enough. I mean, I'd be happy if Warner called the hearing tomorrow, and we had the whole thing done, and President Biden confirmed it, even before the election. But I understand the demands of the election and everything else. But we are now in the most dangerous era that in my lifetime, and I watched the Cuban Missile Crisis on television. I watched the Berlin blockade on television. I've obviously watched the Vietnam War, where a whole lot of people were being killed and bombed just underneath the border of China. I've seen a lot of unpleasantness. Nothing like this.
Dark
We are
days.
in a place different than I'd seen.
Mhm.
The Ukraine-Russia war is absolutely dynamite.
Mhm.
And now Ukraine has invaded Russia. I'm
Mhm.
not necessarily being critical here. I'm simply
Which
saying Russia.
makes me,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
which makes me want to ask, would they not put disclosure on the back burner? Like in their minds, like we have more pressing things, push it back even further. While the
Well,
rest
they
of us are
can.
like, no, we want to know. Is
Uh,
it just something else that's getting, obviously
well,
prioritized?
well,
Obviously.
yeah. The
Yeah.
fundamental basis for the truth embargo existing at all is that it is a national security issue,
Mm-hmm.
and we have been under the threat of nuclear war since the 50s, and that's a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. And so
Mm-hmm.
they once they derived at the decision, I think internally, that disclosing the ET presence while we've got missiles pointed at each other from land, from airplanes, and from the sea, you can't, unintended consequences, and plus there may be technology being studied and reverse engineered, possibly for weaponization, and so it has been a national security issue fundamentally from the get-go. All right, and so but at some point, and while they've done that, right, what we've done is gone through all these years, spent trillions on nuclear weapons and military activities and endless wars and so forth. So, one could wonder what would have happened if they'd actually told the truth. But at this point, it's the reverse. In other words, not getting it done is increasing the possibility that we'll have this nuclear war, as opposed to somehow keeping it secret longer because they're afraid it'll do what? Make things worse? You can't make things worse right now.
Can't make things worse.
And so when you have Russia being invaded for the first time since World War II, when you have Ukraine, and again, I'm not making judgments here, I'm just telling you what's what. When you have the Ukraine desperately wanting long-range missiles from the United States to send into Russia, right? In other words, to attack Russia at great distance with long-distance missiles. When you have both Putin and several of his key people repeatedly saying that could trigger a nuclear war, when you hear stories out of Moscow, when one of his advisors says, why not go ahead and do a test nuke? In other words, drop a nuke in an area away from everybody in the Ukraine just to make the point. When you start learning about development of nuclear torpedoes that can travel hundreds of miles under the ocean, hypersonic missiles that can deliver almost a first strike. And all of that is going on. One of the ugliest, most awful breakouts of violence in the Middle East in my lifetime. It's always been bad, but there's a certain quality to this particular breakout of violence that's unduly distressing. It's awful.
I think this is a good idea right here. Just to use disclosure as a cold bath, like just calm everybody down with something really substantial that maybe.
Exactly.
Do you think disclosure on this sort of a scale, because the United States is a leader, it leads the way in so many things with respects to, military. They're looked to as a superpower. Do you think if the United States, if they disclose quick enough, that everybody would sort of come together?
The dominoes would fall, I hope.
That's yes,
Okay. Well, this is at the essence and the core of the activism. It's complicated.
Yes.
But essentially, disclosure will instigate a new paradigm. It will be the biggest paradigm shift in history.
Mhm.
And paradigm shifts of great magnitude are accompanied by very substantial changes in worldview on the part of large numbers of people,
Mhm.
depending upon how many people learn about what's going on and how fast they learn and so forth. This will be the greatest paradigm shift in history because more people, and I think the most profound event in human history, because more people will
Mhm.
learn about this faster, right?
Mhm.
And the potential impact is greater than any other event in history. There have been some profound things, but they took many years to develop, or they only impacted a limited number of people. This is going to go around the world in about 2 days, and it's going to start changing people's thinking immediately. It is as profound as it gets, and we'll be in a new paradigm. Okay, that
Mhm.
is why Danny Sheehan named long ago his hoped-for nonprofit think tank the New Paradigm Institute. It's why I named Paradigm Research Group. Okay.
Mhm.
So his hope, and I'll show you his website and mine later in a few minutes, but his
Mhm.
hope, the whole essence of his work, and mine as well, and many of our colleagues, is this. We have brought things to where they are right now. We made a lot of choices as a species, as nations,
Mhm.
lots of choices, many, if not most of which were bad. And so we have brought ourselves to where we are. We don't have anybody to blame but us, period.
Mhm.
And we have pushed the limits in every way. We pushed the limit on population. We pushed the limit on energy use. We pushed the limits on encroachment into the environment. We pushed the limit on countless species, the atmosphere, and so forth. We just absolutely pushed it to the max, where we're now facing, well, it's like
It's not
being
sustainable.
surrounded. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like being
Mhm.
surrounded by 45, enemies coming at you from every direction.
Mhm.
Um, and there is a sense of doom, of hopelessness that is starting to spread.
Mhm.
The symptoms of this are everywhere,
Mhm.
and you hear smart people talking about this. There's a whole list of things that get mentioned from time to time in articles here and there that pretty much relate to the same thing.
Mhm.
That people are becoming essentially desperate in
Mhm.
that they don't see how we get out of this. And the consequences of some of our actions are making it harder to lead appropriate lives.
Mhm.
It's also resulting in mass starvation, uh, uh,
Mhm.
genocides, and everything else. So there's the amount of human suffering in the world right now, which,
Mhm.
unlike previous times, you can actually see in 4K or hear about on every single day.
Mhm.
There was a time when all the suffering in the world didn't matter; you wouldn't even know. Now
But
everybody
no,
knows.
also in a big age of censorship, and I have to just take one quick minute to do a station and sponsor ID.
Oh,
For all of those of you who are tuning in right now, thank you to everyone in the chat room. You're completely amazing. You're listening to The Outer Realm on United Public Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM. Our special guest tonight is Stephen Bassett. We are talking UAP disclosure on a really deep scale. So just keep the comments and questions coming. I'm pretty sure
mhm.
like Steve is answering quite a few as we're going along, which is fantastic. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee who do sponsor our show tonight and every night. So thank you very much. We are live on Roku TV as well. There is no chat room there, but please bear in mind that we have 7 other chat rooms coming into this one lane on the board. So be patient with us, and I will highlight anything if it does not get addressed. So back to the show. Thank you, Stephen. The stage is yours.
So again, I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know, but
Mhm.
there's a sense of fatalism, a sense of despair
Mm,
amongst not just a few people,
mhm,
hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, because they sort of realize,
mm,
how are we going to get out of this mess?
mhm,
It's a fair question. And I believe, and Danny Sheehan believes, and others, we have one way out and one way only, and that's
mhm,
disclosure with a capital D. All right. Confirmation of the non-human intelligence. For A number of reasons, but the most important one is it will instigate a very massive worldwide view change where everyone to one degree or another, unless they're living in a cave or in a coma, they're going to reassess how they think about the world and what it means to be here and what it means to be human and what's important, what's not important. Some of these worldview changes in some people will be huge, some will be small, but the collective worldview change will be unprecedented. Nothing like this ever happened. Okay. And when you have something like that is when people can rethink and make changes in their behavior, in their decisions, and what have you. All right. Let me make sure that I am not running out of battery, in which case I am, and I'll have to get plugged in. I need to take a moment to plug my computer in.
No problem. I'll drop you out for a quick moment. Okay, so this is
exciting.
It is very exciting, but it's also pretty frightening also,
Well, it's time. It's way past time. And so, yeah, it's going to affect religious thought, business, economics, science. It's going to affect every single level of society. But isn't it already? I mean, haven't we basically come to that point?
Well, here's another question. Somebody had mentioned in chat earlier, which I'll never find right now because there's so many, but made mention like, why do we, as experiencers or people who have seen things in the sky, captured images, why do we care if it's the official government that says, okay, yes, this is a thing, when so many people out there actually know it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point where we're at, where our government is becoming irrelevant, and that's their own fault. If they don't disclose, I think this is one of the, pushing forces why they're disclosing at all. Because if they don't, no one's ever going to care. They'll lose their power. They will lose their control over the narrative, which is the last thing they want. But I do think it's interesting that ETs themselves, the number one message to contactees, coming from a researcher perspective who looks into contactees, their number one message to people is about the dangers of nuclear power, nuclear weapons, war and destruction of the environment, the pathway we're going on down right now.
Perfect. Yes, I agree. I agree.
Thank you.
And you're back. All right. We were just saying that somebody had mentioned in the chat earlier, with everybody having so many experiences, I'm an experiencer. I mean, I know what I've seen. I've grown up around it. I've heard stories in my family about it. They've seen things. I've seen things. Why do we care? Why do we need the government to officially say, yes, this is a thing? And you were talking about the benefits of all of that before you had to drop out for a moment.
Well, without disclosure, we're not going to find out what they've learned from these crash vehicles, the engineering, the science, breakthrough stuff. We're not going to find out about that. We're not going to have access to it. We're not going to be able to utilize it to address the human condition and so forth. And some of the things we're facing are unbelievably difficult. In fact, I don't see we're going to need some sort of technological breakthrough of enormous importance in order to do it.
Are we seeing this technology in the skies right now, in your opinion? Like
there is the possibility that we have the U.S., at least maybe another country, have probably just the U.S. figured out how to create an anti-gravitic craft. Not like the saucers, because we can't build those. I mean, those things are they're built in a way that's beyond understanding. They're just like extruded at it, whatever. But big flying triangle, something like that. We may have it. In which case, great. That means that anti-gravitic technology will be available post-disclosure. It will come out as part of the disclosure process. And some people may think, well, you just get to fly a lot faster. They don't realize anti-gravitic technology has enormous implications for us and could help solve enormous problems that we have. Okay? So there's that. But in terms of the worldview change, one contactee is just simply one person whose worldview has been changed because they've had contact with extraterrestrials. How many contactees are? I think there's millions. right?
Yeah.
With the
Easily.
majority probably having, suppressed memories.
Mhm.
I'm talking about a worldview change of 8 billion people, right? 8 billion people
That's
overnight.
huge.
Right?
That's huge.
And so so there is this worldview change factor. Now, of course, how we take advantage of it, right? When people are in a frame of mind, when they're open to new things and they see the world a little differently, now the question is, how do you take advantage of that? What do you put before them? What actions do you take to then to create positive outcomes? And that's why you have organizations literally forming now
Mm.
that are basically post-disclosure organizations, all right? Meaning they're already setting up with the idea of, all right, we're going to be doing this and being active in the post-disclosure world, trying to then take that worldview change and turn it into real change, fix real problems, and get this earth back into a place where neither the people in it or the environment itself is under endless threat. And so that's one of the benefits. The second thing is non-trivial. And this is purely a speculation on my part, but it's not. It's based on looking at a lot of this for many years. The ETs have always been part of this from the beginning, and their ultimate intentions are not known. We know a lot about them. We know what they look like. We know how they take people. We know what they do to them when they're on the craft. We know that they fly around a lot. We know that they fly underwater. They seem to be able to fly solid objects. They may have bases on so forth and on this planet, which would make sense.
Do you believe that our governments have been in contact with them?
That is not clear. Obviously, the U.S. government has gotten, I think, live ETs from crash vehicles. Roswell, they had one. So, but being in contact with some survivors of a crash is not what people are thinking about. Are we in touch with them in some sort of formal way? I can't rule it out. It's possible. And if it is, that is something we really need to know about. All right. That's a really powerful reason why we absolutely must have disclosure. It's also one of the biggest public relations problems, the government, our government particularly. The other governments will just basically say, we let the U.S. led on this. So sorry. Now we can tell you problem. Go talk to them. Go talk to the U.S.
Of course.
Is that people are going to be really unhappy about that. And so this is one of the reasons why many people inside the government just want to be dead or fully retired and living in Aruba before we have disclosure, because they don't want to be anywhere having to answer that question and many others. If they
then you have to admit that you knew something all along and that you were hiding.
A lot of people retiring right now out of the Senate.
Well, a lot of people are going to have to admit they knew something all along. There's huge numbers. Well, I'm talking about admitting that, oh, we have a deal with them. Oh, really? You have a deal with the ETs? What is the deal? Okay. It would be like, secretly getting a deal with the Russians in which we exchange secret technology for oil or something and tell nobody, right? And then later on have to admit it. This is
people often point to the 1954 meeting with Eisenhower to that.
If there was a meeting, right?
Right. Well, the reporting on it is pretty good, but as far as a deal, I'm not convinced.
I think if I had to call it, because we don't know for sure, I think Eisenhower may have been taken to see one of the bodies, but not a live ET. But if the Roswell ET was still alive by 54, it's possible he was taken to see him. But again, because of the truth embargo, make up your own story. I mean, everybody, that's what makes it so tough in this field. Everybody can make up their own story, which is fine. But obviously, that's not a way to proceed if you're trying to get reasonable logical outcomes. So I don't know. We'll certainly find out post-disclosure because it's going to come out. But the second thing is the ETs. We know a lot about them. It's not too unreasonable to project with them. All right. And here's my projection, as I've said countless times. The ETs want disclosure. They've certainly helped bring it about. They've done, other than not simply showing up on Mars, they've done almost nothing to stop it, right? Prevent it.
Mm.
After we didn't really, after we lied about the Roswell event, where a press release literally went out, and we were on the edge of disclosure. But one could make a case that Truman would very likely have wanted to wait and see how things are going. By the way, there's evidence turning up of crashes prior to 47. It's very possible that Truman already knew that something was going on before the Roswell event. It's possibly even Roosevelt knew, but there was a war going on, you may recall. So it's hard to know, but just on a basic level, Truman could have said, let's take some time to think about this. Well, 5 years later, we obviously weren't saying anything about it. We were still denying it. So what did they do? They flew all over Washington, D.C. They didn't go put a display over Philadelphia or Kansas City, over Washington, D.C., where everybody could see it. Unfortunately, people weren't walking around with cameras 24/7. And so whatever shots, film of it is gone. I think the government may have it or it's gone. But there have been recreations of this event, which obviously triggered the Robertson panel and everything else. So again, if you take it all in perspective, this is heading toward disclosure, worldwide confirmation. And what then? Are the ETs going to go home? Are they going to just somehow pull up from all their under bases and everything, close them all down, ship the stuff off in a U-Haul, and head on back to their star? Are they going to leave us? There's almost no logic to that. It's just simply not going to happen.
That makes me. No, but there are some who will probably hear long before us. I think it would be, like, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I think it would be naive to think that we're the first species here on this planet. There have to be others here who were here before us. We're just the kids in the sandbox that don't know how to play nice, essentially.
Well,
I mean, you see traces of this all over the world in ancient technology, monuments. I mean, just look at some of the monuments across the world. You see traces of them everywhere.
Here's my understanding.
Okay.
My understanding is that there was a whole range of Homo species competing for thousands upon thousands of years, and all of them fell off, but one, Homo sapiens sapiens, and that we have been around for about 250,000 years. And I think that one of the things that's been confusing is that there have been cataclysms without question. And one of them occurred about 11,500 years ago. And so whatever civilization was extant prior to that cataclysm, it was basically destroyed at that point. And then humans had to sort of start again. And we're starting to find some evidence for some civilization prior to that cataclysm. But naturally, the unknown factor of the pre-flood stuff has involved a lot of exotic thinking. But do I think there was, there's only been one Homo species here, and that's Homo. I mean, there is one advanced technological species, and it's Homo sapiens sapiens. All of our predecessors died off. We did not get into technology of any substance until after the flood, but there's probably some interesting things before the flood. Göbekli Tepe is absolute outstanding example of this. But with the idea that before the flood there was another kind of human, no. What there has been, though, is ETs here whenever they want. What I meant.
Yes.
Wherever they want, but not humans. Okay, they're ETs. No. And so, but whatever they've done in the past is, I'd love to find out about it. I hope they have some great YouTube videos to share about what they did.
I want in on that too. Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
But that's essentially the past. It's interesting.
Well, here's my question then, because we've had displays of UFO activity since 1947 at unprecedented levels. They've been showing themselves to millions of people, essentially. But are you saying, if this is my understanding of what you're saying, is that disclosure would be a necessary prerequisite to open official contact?
Exactly.
Is that whether?
Okay.
Here's the difference. Again, I'm a big Ancient Alien fan. So, the gentleman that created, his name escapes me right now, I can't believe it, but created Ancient Aliens was a genius, and he did some amazing work. He wrote a lot of those shows. It's extraordinary. The ETs have been here whenever they want to, and in ancient times they were here, and they did whatever the hell they wanted to do, and we're trying to maybe sort out aspects of that. But again, if it's 3,000 years ago, and you've got ETs here, it's not hard to figure out how it goes. They're gods. As far as any human being, they're gods.
Absolutely.
And so they can come, they can go, they can do anything they want. And they're not going to be too concerned about how it's going to affect things. And that's cool. I mean, that's apparently something they do. Now, it might not be the same ETs here now. It could be another group, right? We don't know, right? So, but now is different. This is not ancient Egypt or Samaria. It is not ancient South America. We are a fully technological, spacefaring, globally connected civilization. We are essentially, in a way, at their level. Right? I say when at their level, we're in their club, right? Now, we're not the smartest people in the club. We're not the most advanced, but we are in that club.
Right.
We have the ability to destroy ourselves. We have the ability to completely disrupt the environment. None of the ancient peoples could do this. We ultimately will have the ability to go to stars if the technology is real, and I think it is. And if we go to the stars, we could do all manner of untoward things. We're just in a whole different place, and so they cannot engage us. And even worse, if they came down, we wouldn't call them gods. We'd call them extraterrestrials, right? And ask for their green card or something. I mean, it's just not the same thing. And they understand that. They understand that we are at the point where if there are conglomerates of spacefaring civilizations out there that work together in whatever way, we are very close to being part of that. And this is not necessarily the case with each developing planet. Some planets get to where we are now, and we're doing just fine, and we have ET contact, and it's all just wonderful. How typical our story is, well, who could assess that? But the fact is that we're in a mess. I mean, we are just dangerous as hell. We're lethal and violent and vicious and destructive.
Thank you.
We're wasting our resources and our time. And
Brandon just said it too. They don't want us to blow up the planet. Do you think they're watching us?
So this is going to be factored into their engagement, obviously. If we were, in fact, in fantastic place, then I would assume the engagement would be different. In other words, if we didn't have a nuclear standoff underway, there wouldn't be any nuclear weapons to turn off. And so that wouldn't be happening, would it? Right. But that's the way it is. And so I'm saying that another outcome of disclosure and why it's so essential is that I just don't think open contact is going to take place until we have disclosure. Now, someone will say, well, you know, why does it matter? Right? Why does it matter? That's something that only the ETs can answer. But I think it's clearly, if we have disclosure in a year or two to get real used to that, and humans are really good at getting used to stuff. I mean, it's amazing what we can get used to, and not anything, whatever, it doesn't matter. We adapt, we improvise, and we get bored easily. And so after about 2 years, people are going to be bored. They don't want to read anything about it. They need something new. What do you got? Whatever. And so open contact becomes extremely not anticlimactic, and so less disorderly, appropriate. Okay. And so I think that that's the issue. Now, if we have a nuclear war, that pretty much ruins this whole game plan. And that's the only reason why I give any credence at all to the possibility that if we launch those missiles against each other, they would simply turn them off and they would just land on the ground like a giant lump of metal. I can't rule it out. There's a great logic to it. They probably have the ability to do it.
I mean, Nagasaki and Hiroshima happened, and they were around.
But that was just two cities. I'm talking about massive annihilation of whole areas. I mean, we're talking about major environmental destruction. That was just two cities. There was not much difference between Nagasaki and Hiroshima, or the firebombing of Tokyo and Dresden. They were both totally destroyed. Huge numbers of people died. This is quite different. Thousands of nuclear warheads flying all over the place, destroying cities, setting massive fires. So there is a logic that they would intervene, but I'm not gonna push that. In other words, and I don't want anybody going, well, let's just go with the flow. Let's don't really fix anything. Let's don't do diplomacy. Let's don't try to do anything, because they'll take care of it for us. You want to roll that dice? You want to, after all these years it took to get us where we are, you want to roll that dice and blow it all up? So there is this situation where we have an end disclosure. Things are really dangerous. The ETs are not making a move. They're seeing developments down here that are positive. And that's about all I can say. But there is one time aspect of this that is defined, right? It's more clearly defined, at least in my view. Talked about it many times. I follow as best I can. I have a useless degree in physics that they teach now, I think, in the 6th grade. But I kind of follow the efforts to try to understand space drive, warp drive, whatever the hell you want to call it. And believe me, there's an awful lot out there about this. It's well underway. And that's just in the public sector. God knows how much work has been done in the secret world regarding solving the problem of interstellar travel. I believe it will be solved. Since I believe that, therefore, I have the following the following statement just drops right out of that, and it's not hard to get. I mean, it's common sense. If we build starships, meaning we can go from here to Alpha Centauri in a reasonable amount of time, are we going to weaponize those ships, or are we just going to go in peace?
Well, there are civilian companies, like actual corporations doing them there, like Elon Musk and, Bezos. So the technology is definitely there. I mean, they've been more successful.
They're building rockets. They're building rockets.
Okay,
I'm not aware that they're building interstellar craft.
Well, no, not interstellar.
We have always abused technology. That's what we do.
Yeah.
The interstellar craft is going to be built. Well, let me put it this way: they may be. If somebody is building an interstellar craft, it's not Bezos, or they're not rich enough.
Right.
This would be governmental. This would be government. But if we build such a craft, we're not going to send it out there without arming it. We're going to put nuclear weapons on it, whatever else we can. In all our science fiction, that's what we do. But it's what we do. There's no way, right? We'll do that. And we'll justify it. It's like, look, you got to play it safe. You got to be able to protect yourself. And so at some point, some defined point in the future, which I don't think is far away, I think it's before 2050, frankly, at some point, we're going to be able to fly out of our solar system with a bunch of nukes on a ship, which means that we become a problem for the entire area around us. Not the entire galaxy, but the area around us. We're a problem.
100%.
Some idiot humans are going to turn up, and some stupid idiot is going to launch a nuke because he's what? And so we become a threat for the first time. We're not a threat to anybody outside this planet. Period. Zero. Okay, until we launch those ships. And so my thinking is that in terms of the ET timeline, they have a certain latitude of what they may or may not do. But once we build those starships, they will intervene. That is the time frame. And if it's before then, fine. But they're not going to sit back and let us build those ships and fly out of the solar system. Every ounce of logic that I have in my brain says absolutely not. And if you turn it around, if you were if humans were advanced and we had star travel and we were circling a planet in the Centauri system, and we saw a planet that was on the verge of that was loaded with nukes and behaving the way we do, about to develop star travel, do you think that we would go, well, what can you do, and just head on back to Earth and say, gee, I hope they don't find out where we are?
No, they're going to contain us, keep us in one space.
This is why so many researchers have said modern age of UFOs coincides exactly with the atomic age. That's when contact really ramped up to a huge level.
It is not an accident. It is not an accident. And so there's a lot of talk about how we're quarantined and quarantined. We're not quarantined. But when we build nuclear, when we build starships, we will be quarantined. Okay. Now, so that's the time marker, and it's close. All right. So until then, we're not a threat to them or anybody else outside our system. And so they can kind of play it as they want to. And then the only issue is, do we get disclosure first or do we get nuclear war? That's why I created the paradigm clock some 26 years ago. Paradigm clock is disclosure at midnight. Capital D disclosure, confirmation. The paradigm clock's about to hit midnight. Doomsday clock is nuclear war. The doomsday clock is closer than it's ever been. I think it's at 90 seconds. The closest it's ever been in all these 77 years. It was created after Hiroshima. 90 seconds. And so it's a race. Now, do the ETs care about this race? I'd love to know. I would love to know if it's a factor to them. It may be, if you guys really want to do it, what the hell? The universe is very old. The Earth will survive you. You'll kill a lot of species off, but millions more will return. You'll be gone. Everything will be grown over. We'll come back in a couple thousand years, see what's going on.
The planet has a way of healing itself. It's done it many times.
Well, they do care. We know this from firsthand contactee accounts. This is the message they give almost all contactees.
So this is a very complicated dynamic. And the only reason that I simply will not push the idea that they'll stop this war, if it happens, is that it discourages people from pursuing diplomacy. It discourages people from taking human action on this. Not that we're doing much, we're not. But the last thing I want to do is make it easier for people to say, what can you do? And by that, I'm talking governments. What can you do? All right, how are you going to stop? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Or the ETs will turn them off. It's okay. So let's invade this or invade that or be assholes even bigger than we have been. I don't want to help that. But, it's like, it's nice to have at least the possibility they might intervene just in case. We've almost had a nuclear a nuclear event on several occasions when at the last minute, the commander of a base or commander of a submarine somehow made a decision, don't do this. So we've never had that accidental event. And so we don't know what
prevailed. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be that if in the case of one of the Soviet events, when they mistook, in one case, it was a missile being shot out by one of the Scandinavian countries to test something, nothing big, but some of their systems interpreted it as having a Russian trajectory. And one of the bases south of Moscow basically got the clearance. Somehow the clearance went through. We're under attack. Launch. And the base commander, the guy that ran that facility, couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't trust it. He didn't, there was a logic to it he didn't like. And so he did not launch. He had the clearance to launch, but he didn't do it. And subsequently he went back to Moscow, and we learned later that he wasn't punished. He had a life. He had work, and he lived out a life, and he wasn't punished. Ultimately they realized, thank you, appreciate that. But what if he launched? He would have launched a number of missiles, probably 8 or 10 or 12. They would have hit 2 or 3 cities. And then the question would be, the Russians would then go, wait a minute, this was a mistake. It was a missile out of Denmark. We fucked up. We're so sorry. Now, this is the whole theme of failsafe. I would invite every single person that hears this, anybody else, go rewatch Failsafe. Watch that movie. That movie will get you. That movie gets right down to the fundamentals and makes it very real. It's a masterpiece, and it doesn't get played much, replayed much, because it's such a downer. It really is, but it's scary as hell. It's brilliant. Watch that movie. We are always dancing on the edge of failsafe. And so the question is, would we have stopped there and said, look, we've lost 3 cities, but let's stop. We're not going to destroy your cities, and then let's get together and end these nukes. And I don't know. I'm not optimistic. We've come that close. Now, the ETs could have prevented that. He could have launched 10 missiles out of that base south of Moscow, and ETs would have turned him off. And people, what the hell happened? What the hell happened? And then maybe at that point they would have disclosed themselves, like, you idiots. Jeez, we didn't think you'd do it, but you did it. So we turned them off, and now you're going to deal with us. Okay? We're going to see if we can help you get out of this mess, you crazy friggin' fools. I don't know.
It's frightening. We're going to create our own demise, and disclosure better happen, because at the rate that we're going, we're not going to really be here to see it in its glory,
The ETs
that is why I'm worried about Warner taking the third option. That's why I'm worried about Warner taking the third option, which is waiting until after the election, after the inauguration. It's 4 more months. A lot can happen in 4 months. And things are very scary right now. So I'd like to get it done. Let's get it done. Right. And then what happens will happen. We will have done what we needed to do. We disclose the ET presence. It'll go around the world. Obviously, there's going to be a great deal of excitement and interest and what have you. It's not going to destabilize the arms race. No. And then if we go ahead and have a nuclear war, well, did the best we could. I'll have no regrets. But this is why I do what I do. Right. I was born sick, as I said. I was conceived 6.5 months after the nuclear weapons in Japan. I was born 6.5 months before Roswell, and somehow 49 years after that, I got into this, and I finally realized why. It's just, I've lived my whole life under the threat of nuclear destruction, mutual assured destruction, the whole life under the idea that mutual assured destruction will hold, and nobody is going to be stupid enough to launch a nuclear weapon. And yet I see year after year monumental examples of human stupidity. And so, yeah, I'm on Xanax. You know anybody that isn't on something? Do you know anybody that isn't taking recreational drugs or regular drugs or whatever, or doesn't have an upset stomach? I mean, do you know what the suicide rate is? The human race, except in the poorest of countries, is like, they're all mentally imbalanced in a sense. We're just stressed to the max. Unless you completely become oblivious to everything around you, which some people do, go live in a small place with no Wi-Fi and just stare at the ocean. And people want to do that. But unfortunately, there's less and less space for that. You can't really get away from this anymore. And if you're in a really poor country, you may not hear much about it. But then the next thing you know, everybody's starving to death, like in Yemen, or Sudan, Ethiopia, or whatever. And so even being away from it all isn't save you, because at some point, it
catches you eventually in one form or another.
So many countries have nuclear power at this point. So do you think what if something like Ukraine or Mexico disclosed? Do you think that is going to push the ball forward?
Ukraine is busy. Mexico... the head of Mexico, Mexico is an important country. It has a huge amount of interest. So if the new female president of Mexico were to come forward and disclose and provide substantial evidence, it might be enough to trigger the chain reaction. It's possible. Mexico, unfortunately, though, is in an extremely difficult place right now. The cartels are getting very violent. 16 candidates. Imagine if this happened in the United States. 16 candidates were assassinated while campaigning in the last election. God knows how many. So the nation is in turmoil, but it's close. Canada, absolutely. UK, absolutely. France, Australia, Russia.
It's been happening.
China.
Yeah. But they're waiting
Germany.
for the superpower to come forward now. Right?
They are waiting for us. Right. In other words, they have always been waiting for us. And you may say, well, we don't
what
want
about that. If ET comes out? Why, what about letting ET come forward and disclose? They just show up on.
Maybe you should run for president, Steve.
I know. Yeah.
I'm way too old.
Yeah. I don't know.
They haven't. We can't count on that. We can't count on that. They haven't done that, and there's no reason to assume that they will. We should
solve the problem, right?
Again, well, I do not know how they view us. I do not know what their range of
I'm sure.
decision making is. All I know is they haven't done full out open engagement yet. They may have in the ancient past, but that's the ancient past, doesn't count. They have taken very clear actions, made very clear statements to many contactees that indicate that they're fully aware that we're really screwing up here. But I am not aware of a single contactee that's ever reported that they were told by the extraterrestrials that they would intervene. Now, there's been hundreds of thousands of accounts, so I'm not suggesting that there hasn't been one such account.
Agreed.
But if there had, if they really intended to do it, they wouldn't tell one contactee that. They'd tell thousands of contactees. Yeah. What they do is warn us about our future.
Exactly.
But they don't say, "Oh, we're going to come save you." So
it's our job to solve our own problems. That's what they tell people.
Yeah, up to a point. And so,
and here we are.
Look, if it wasn't for star travel, if it was impossible, well, obviously star travel is possible because I think they come from the stars. But let's say that they knew that we were 1,000 years away from being able to travel to the stars. My guess is that they would be much less active and not really involved that much. There is a direct tie as the way I see it, on one end of this history is the creation, testing, and dropping of the atomic bomb on human beings, our own species, not in the middle of the ocean, on men, women, and children, mostly women and children. That's the beginning. And on the other end of this is the same people that dropped those bombs on women and children are building starships that can leave our solar system. That's the time frame. And it appears to be approximately 100 years from around 1947 to 2047, roughly, right? Because I think that's how fast we're closing in on it. 100 years, not a long time. And all of this is happening in that space. And it's been happening from the very beginning. Now, I'm learning more about possible crashes prior to 47. And one of the reasons of that is Michael Schratt is going around now doing an extraordinary presentation about the work of Leonard Stringfield, who is one of those great researchers who did unbelievable work fairly early, was not somebody running around trying to, build a Leonard Stringfield world. He just did his work and hope people would come see it. But apparently there's evidence for crashes prior to 47, and Stringfield investigated that and had a lot of people talking to him. 46 and maybe even before, which is significant. And if it's true, it will be fascinating to learn how those crashes were so well handled that they simply weren't even anywhere known at the point of Roswell. Remember, Roswell, if there had been any crashes prior, Roswell was the first crash where they put out a press release and said, "We have a crash vehicle." It's like that was the first one, right?
And even then it remained hidden for till the 70s. It wasn't really talked about at all.
Imagine if there had been no press release and they'd gotten everything and nobody knew anything at all. And it moved forward. It would have made it a lot easier to play this game as we went forward. So this is all history that I hope will come out eventually. I mean, the history of all of this, it deserves dozens of documentaries beyond even what we have, major documentaries with millions of dollars of funding. By the way, I think we've done a lot. We've done a lot here. I think it's time to go to promos, if you don't mind. I'll wrap it up. Getting late.
Please. Yes.
But promo number one. I don't have the page handy. Might be able to get it, but the esteemed James Fox is in October going to put out his newest documentary, and it is called. Oh God, I'm having a blank again. It's called The Program. Okay, and I got a feeling it is going to be a blockbuster. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can do this. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna share a page with you. 1 moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Coming on back here. going to share a page. Going to come down here. James is, I love James Fox. He's one of the greats in this field. His contributions are just hard to measure. But this is again another example of this process of wrapping up the truth embargo, ending it. We're in this final stage where things are happening faster than the government can keep up with. It is here we go. It's already been written up in the Hollywood Reporter. Okay.
Wow. All right. Here we go.
New doc. The program set from the Phenomenon director, James Fox. And it's going to include all the people you expected. Grush.
Wow.
Mellon. All of the top people. All the people in this field. In other words, he was the guy who certainly deserved this access and got it. And this is scheduled, I think, from October 23, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. See if they have a date. I'm not seeing it yet, but I have heard that it's October, and I think October 23. So that is a few, just a short time before the election. All right. Let me see. And so that's coming. All right. And look for that. There are other projects going on in Washington, in Hollywood, and in the film industry on this. Higher, well, let me do it this way: more professional career people are getting into this because they're realizing it's all true now. And by God, boy, we're going to make a lot of money. And they're putting together nonfiction projects at a level that, of course, we would have dreamed of 30 years ago. Two major examples. J.J. Abrams, one of the biggest producers in all of Hollywood, A-list, created a series called UFO on Showtime. This was 2 years ago. Highest rated program in the history of Showtime. Big surprise. A lot of money spent. Okay.
Yes.
He didn't get the proper consulting with people in our world. Okay. Kind of worked with, it's like, because we're all crazy, right? We actually believe it was true when the government said it wasn't. So we got to be a little nuts. So one of the shows was a problem, but nevertheless, he did it. He is now doing a follow-up. Okay. And I forget the name of it. I think they changed the name, and I'll have to check, but they changed the name from UFO because I know why they did it, but essentially it's the second season of UFO, and that's coming very soon. Meanwhile, Steven Spielberg, you remember him. He's done some fine fiction and narrative fiction on the subject and made a small fortune. Well, he's about to do his first nonfiction series. He did his nonfiction series. It's called Encounters. And again, he did not get and consult with, I think, people in our world sufficiently. And so he screwed up one of the episodes badly. Okay, but still, that's Spielberg doing nonfiction.
That's huge. Yeah,
that's right. More is coming. And so because we're in this transition and because media is so critical, almost a year ago, publicist Dan Harari and I formed an organization called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And the reason we did this was simple. The last months of the truth embargo need all the coverage it can get, right? I'd like to encourage it. But the post-disclosure world is going to be an incredible time when the demand for content, information worldwide is going to be off the charts, okay? And so that's going to happen. But what is not clear is to what degree the big shots, and believe me, the big shots are going to jump into this with both feet, okay? The ones with giant studios, multi-million-dollar budgets and everything else. To what degree will the big shots who have now seen the light of day reach out to all of the citizen researchers, activists, journalists, documentarians that have been carrying all the water for all these years without much compensation, while the government is saying we're nuts? To what degree will they do that? So we created the Hollywood Alliance to facilitate it. And let me show you that page. Hang on. Right? Okay. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Forgot to do this. Got to come down here. Go here and share and share and there and here. So this is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It is the only really entity of its kind in the world. The goal is of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is to provide more unified voice in the media leading up to and following the impending revelation of the presence of extraterrestrial life. Disclosure, that should have a capital D. Through storytelling in feature films, documentaries, and TV programming, we are a media-centric resource, teaming those actively working within the research side of UAP and ET with those actively working as storytellers. It's nonprofit, 501c3. It doesn't cut deals. It gets no percentages. It simply networks people together to do this, to help them find each other, also to acknowledge that they're interested, right? In other words, to come forward. And so that is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It is a nonprofit. We are taking donations, tax deductible, and the front page has a thorough description of that. Now, here's how it's built. We have, the founders are myself and, oh, wait a minute. I just realized I can't do that. It's funny, but I've been able to scroll on some others, but not with you all.
You should be able to scroll right down. I mean, it should
Started to, yeah.
But I mean, I can't go to an internal page. I think that this doesn't work.
That's strange because I've done it from
let me try it again. Let me see if it works this time.
Okay.
Hang on a second. Tell me if a new page comes up. Do you see a new page?
No.
Yeah,
No.
there it is. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, great.
Founding members. So you got it? Founding members? You see it?
Yeah.
Okay,
We
great.
see it.
Now we can do it. All right. Well,
Fantastic.
look, so we have two groups of founding members. One is the UAP ET group. Totally, now we have 174 total members. We'll have 200 pretty soon. And as I go down here, I'm sure you're going to see some people.
Oh my God, Michael Carter, one of our frequent flyers here.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have all agreed to allow their face and bio to be put up here as founding members, making it clear that they support the mission of the truth embargo. I mean, mission of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And so we have about, 70 some of these. All right. Okay, fine. So in addition to that, we have another group, and this is what we call Hollywood founding members. Now, these are, when I say Hollywood stands in for the entire content industry. US, Canada, UK, India, wherever. Everywhere that professionals are making content, we use Hollywood to stand in for that. And so we have quite a few members, about 70 some. These are all people with professional careers of one type or another in the content creation business. Some have actually careers in both, literally in the UAP world as well as the Hollywood world, and they have to pick one. And so they pick the one that's most appropriate. We have one Oscar winner. We're working on a second Oscar winner. That's our Oscar winner right there, Shirley. And we're working on another. And so there's a lot of talent here. Now, obviously, we would love to have some of the major stars and so forth in Hollywood join us. Many of them have shown interest in this subject. And we think one day they will. And when they do, our ability to raise some serious funding so we can do more work will expand. But we're not quite there yet, but we're going to get there. And then we have supporting members. And these are individuals who have provided any money to us, have given any donations. When they do, they go up here. This is an interesting way they've done this, but it's fine. And that'll get as long as we want it to be. So that is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And we think we're trying to get it developed so that in the post-disclosure world, we're going to have our people be part of the content being created. And the work that we've all done will play a role there and have influence. And it's bringing these two worlds together. And I'm very proud of this. So far, so good. We need to raise some money, though, because we're running it out of our back pocket. But still, very proud of it. Now, let's see. There's probably some other things I want to share here. Hang on a second. Let me see if this changes. Okay, well, I've shown you. Let me see. Did this page come up? Do you see a new page now?
Not yet.
That's an internal page. All right.
We're still supporting members here. Yeah.
That's all right. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going
Mhm.
to go back and I'm going to show you this. This is in a fairly important matter here, at least for me, at least. Present, share, and this one. So I showed you the Paradigm Research Group site a while back, and you saw it. It's a substantial site. It's about to be changed, and here's why. Why I waited so long, who knows why. Sometimes there's a time and place for everything. But certainly, given how close disclosure is, I had to take a move. And so while operating as a sole proprietorship, exempt from any government interference as a tax deductible entity or a tax free entity, tax exempt, I finally have registered as a 501c3. And so now Paradigm Research Group is a 501c3 District of Columbia tax exempt organization able to accept tax deductible funding from any American citizens. And that starts now. Now I haven't gotten the donate page up yet, and the GoFundMe up and so forth. But this is underway, and essentially, this is all about the Paradigm Research Group to have a role in the post-disclosure world. I've now got to get serious funding, and this is going to help me raise that. I've got a number of key projects that I want to do, and that will totally appropriate for the post-disclosure world, or certainly for this period. The single most important, the one most important right now is I want to hold a 7th X conference. I held 6 X conferences back in the early aughts, and I want to hold X conference 2025. I've already done the research, and it's we'd be held at the Press Club, but I'm going to have to raise about $25,000 to do that, to set the date. Until then, I cannot set the date. So PRG is a nonprofit. I'm going to rejigger the website so it reflects its new incarnation, which is essentially a think tank. I'm small, maneuverable, a think tank. Danny Sheehan is, of course, creating a massive organization called the New Paradigm Institute, but I'm a small entity. But I have a history. I have some ideas. My office is just a block and a half from the White House. So I'm in the middle of the action. And so Paradigm Research Group could be a player. I have plenty of people that want to volunteer to be consultants or advisors, create white paper, whatever. So that's where PRG is going. I invite you to think about that and, spread the word. And then the other thing I want to show you is this page. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm going to drop over for this. No, hold on. Let's go here. Okay. Present, share screen, share, and let me see if this comes up. Do you see the New Paradigm Institute?
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. This is important.
Okay.
Danny Sheehan has wanted to create this for decades. He got in this field back in 1977 when Jimmy Carter was doing his study. He then re-entered the field again when Stephen Greer was putting his stuff together and was counsel for Greer for many years. And then he's been involved in it deeply since. It's the last major, I think, thing of his life and his career, and it's significant. And so he finally raised some substantial money to launch a major entity. It is a nonprofit operating out of California as a subsidiary of another nonprofit, the Romero Institute. It's the New Paradigm Institute. And they've already got a very high level website, which reflects obviously their work and projects. A project coming up is Global Disclosure Day, October 20. I will be speaking. It's online. You can check that out. A lot of people are going to be participating in that. They're finding addition to the UN. They're going to do the first teach-ins, I think, of any consequence since the Vietnam War. The first one is at Yale, where they're going to bring some people in to speak to the faculty and students. And they're just projects after projects after project. They also have a project that's to try to get the Congress to pass the UAP Disclosure Act. And so this is the New Paradigm Institute, and it is a nonprofit. I really look, there are so many millionaires in this country. There's a lot of billionaires in this country. We have unbelievable group we have an unbelievable large number of incredibly wealthy people. And many of these are funding huge organizations. They're funding significant projects with huge amounts of money. I get that. And it's wonderful. That's good. We want that.
Mm-hmm.
But the ET issue is still coming out of the stigma imposed on it by the US government for decades.
Mm-hmm.
That stigma is gone. And this thing is happening. And so disclosure is the biggest event in human history. This is going to be the think tank on this issue post-disclosure for a good while. And it is limited by only the amount of money. It has unlimited projects it can do. And so if there's somebody out there that is capable of giving $40 or $50 million to a presidential campaign, as many did, this is something that's going to be affecting the planet for forever, for a long time. It's worthy of that kind of a donation, right? Whether it's 50, 10, 15, 1 million, it's worthy of those kinds of donations. This is going to be the think tank in the post-disclosure world, and its intentions are nothing but positive. In other words, how can we convert disclosure into solutions to the worst of our problems so we can start chilling out on this planet and not have to live every day knowing that somewhere on the planet, all over the planet, people are suffering, dying, wars are taking place, women and children are being killed, the environment is being degraded, all of that, and having to live with it day after day. We can fix that. And so this is the New Paradigm Institute, and I'm promoting it really hard because it deserves to be promoted very, very hard. And Danny Sheehan is a legend. I encourage you to check him out. He has a website which shows his career, which is just amazing. Let me go ahead and see if I can get that. Let me see if I can find that one, then we'll wrap up with that. I am so proud that he is a friend and colleague. I can't even tell you. It's like, how did that happen? Right? All right. Danny Sheehan, whoops. And he doesn't promote himself enough. You know, he's too busy working to like tell everybody how wonderful he is. You know, and I get that. Some people are like that. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. It's not that. Bingo, right here.
Okay.
This is his. I got to share it. Hang on. Gonna go back. All right. Present, share, and there we go.
Alrighty.
So this is his website. It's also the Romero Institute. And this site is where you can get a much more comprehensive bio of him. Let me see. Here's his biography, right? And I encourage people to go and read this man's bio and see what a legend is made of. All right. This is the bio. Okay. There's no fluff in there. He's also written a biography, half of his biography called The People's Advocate. It's out of print. If you can find it, buy it. This is a great man, and he is on our side and has been on our side for quite a long time. Again, he deserves all the support that we can provide, in my view. Coming back to you all. So there you go. I think I've promoted myself.
That's okay. That's okay. You've earned that. My goodness, you're a wealth of information, and I'm so glad that you returned to the show. It's been a long time coming, and you have an open door policy. Whenever you'd love to come back, we'd love to have you. Anything you want to share, it would be awesome. And I will most certainly, all your links, by the way, are posted in the show description. I'm not one of those people that don't put anything there so people can't come and find you. They can come and find you that way. And I'm hoping that you can push forward with this. I'm hoping the results will come as you'd like them to, because I think it needs to happen. If anything, just to overshadow everything else that's happening in the world that is bringing us all down, anything that can bring a little bit of light.
We need to get excited again, like we were when the space program was getting close to landing on the moon. We got really excited then. There's been some other moments like that. We need something. This is bigger, though, far bigger than that.
Well,
By
it's
the
a
way, I
long
want to mention
history.
I am on Twitter. You can at Steve Bassett or Paradigm Research Group. I welcome all Twitter followers. So consider getting me back on after the House hearing. I think it's on November 13th. So sometime after the 13th, let's do another one at
Well,
least.
I would love, I mean, I'm booked all the way into January.
Well,
So
congratulations.
thank
Great.
you. And Preston has a show every Monday night called The Light Gate, and it's all UFO related. In fact, a lot of the people you've mentioned have been on the show, and I was happy to see, looking at your website, of all these people who are involved in your Hollywood project. Many of them have been on the show, and I love John Semple and Jack Roth. I'm actually working on a project with them right now, consulting on a new film project that they're doing. So I can definitely vouch for them. Michael Carter's a very dear friend. So I love seeing familiar faces. These are, when we see people we relate to and that we recognize and that we know are doing great things out there, I think that helps the cause. So,
and I should mention, if somebody is as a substantive career effort or work in the UAP ET genre, or substantive career in content creation, right?
Right.
And you think you'd like to be a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, get in touch with me or Dan Harari, and we'll check it out. You might very well get joined up. And let's see, so there was something else. Oh, and again, doing podcasts is probably the most important thing that I do, frankly. PRG has some nice projects if it gets funding, but by and large, I've done hundreds and hundreds of them. I have a podcast list of interview lists of programs. It's now at 257. I've actually shared that list with quite a few people. If somebody wants that list, I'll send it to them. No big deal. And I keep adding to it. The podcast army, let me tell you, the podcast army was a non-trivial thing that the truth embargo people did not see happen. They had already been buried in a social media situation and everything. And then the podcast thing shows up and they realize this is just ridiculous. I mean, now it's possible to talk and interact and interview and be seen all around the world. And everything is archived. It never goes away. And so the whole internet is piling up with all these statements and interviews by people that basically make the point that the truth embargo is completely useless. And somehow or another, they've clung to it. But the podcast army is just one more aspect of all of this that guarantees we will get disclosure without question. And then post-disclosure, I predict the podcast army will grow even bigger, right? Because everybody is going to want to talk to everybody.
Oh, I can tell you, UPRN is growing by the week. We get millions of listeners.
The subject is not going away.
It's not going away. It's growing. And I love that. So I will be in touch with you. I will email you and I will connect you up with Preston. If it's okay, I'd like to pass your email on to him. And then you guys can connect, with his show, which is spectacular. I'm not just saying that because he's a friend, because he is.
And because this is my key work. If in most 90% of the time, if somebody were to call me and say, "Look, I just lost my guest, and I got to do a podcast in 10 minutes," this is particularly for live shows. Most of the time, I can just say, "Fine, I'll do it." So don't hesitate.
Right. We're going to pass you around, Steve. That's the way it goes. All right. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. That was awesome.
A pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Good night. Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee, of course, for sponsoring this shindig. And big thank you to United Public Radio. And thank you to Preston, who hung in there with me tonight. I know usually we interact a whole lot more with chat. Very, very difficult. Steve has a lot to say. And I know we really pride ourselves on giving our guests the absolute fullest attention So, of course, that's what we've done. But we've seen the comments, and I know Preston will probably go back and try to address as many as he can after the fact, because I know Preston. So, big thank you to Stephen Bassett. And tomorrow night, guys, another really special night here in the Outer Realm. We welcome Mindy Toutfest, and she's going to be discussing her book, Dying to Meet Them, A Woman's Incredible Journey from NDE to UAP. And she's going to talk about her NDE experiences and what she calls the void, not with the typical scenario that you would expect. But she talks about this internal journey of growth and her investigation and research into the correlations previously, tongue twister, found between UFOs and near-death experiencers, using the Omega Project while taking them a step further. And she describes them in really great detail based on her own personal experiences. I can tell you, like, I read this, and I mean, I just wanted to hug her. I had to email her. I wanted to really hug you, Mindy. Like, it was just amazing. So tune in for that, and we'll get back on track with chat as well. And don't forget to check out Preston, Dennett, Dolly Saffron, Monday night on the Light Gate, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you, and we love you all big time, and thank you for participating in chat. So we'll say good night.
Thanks, everyone.